I know what you're thinking, an autobiography. Ugh, that's what your grandma reads, right? That's what you have to read in history. Well, I have to offer you an autobiography that is quite different from any other autobiography I have ever read. Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson is a very unique autobiography in that it is written in verse. Being written in verse, it means the chapters are short, that they are at the most 2 pages. There are several poems within the autobiography that are only 3-line haikus. That's the entire poem. To give you an idea of how short and how poetic the autobiography can be, here's a short little chapter called How to Listen, number 9. Under the back porch, there's an lone place I go, writing all I've heard. This poem gives you an idea of how short and poetic the autobiography can be, and also gives you an idea of how enthusiastic Jacqueline is about writing. Obviously, she went on to publish her own book, but a lot of the book is her enjoying and experimenting with both language and writing. So what's the story about? As you can hear in the background, there are some crickets chirping. This book takes place largely in the South. However, it does take place in New York City as well. The autobiography starts off in Ohio in the 1960s, which is where Jacqueline and her 2 siblings, Hope and Adela, live with their mother and father. Their father is from Ohio. In Ohio in the 1960s, at that time, blacks enjoyed a lot of freedoms and equal rights that blacks in the Deep South did not receive. When things start to go south with Jacqueline's mother and father, they move south and they pick up her mother, Jacqueline, and her siblings. They move to South Carolina, which is where her mother's family is from. In the 1960s in South Carolina, the Jim Crow laws are no longer in existence. However, Jacqueline quickly realizes that they don't receive the same treatment as they do in South Carolina as they did in Ohio. In South Carolina, they realize that they ride the back of the bus to keep from making trouble. They step off the sidewalk when somebody walks by. One great chapter, a lovely little short poem that talks about what it feels like to grow up in that area, is this short one where she describes how she still sees signage that has to do with blacks and whites and their equal treatment. In downtown Greenville, they painted over the whites only sign, except on the bathroom doors. They didn't use a lot of paint, so you can still see the words right there, like a ghost, standing in front, still keeping you out. I think this is a great poem because it depicts a lot of what the book is about. It's a lot about growing up, but also about race relations, what it's like to grow up black in the 1960s and 1970s, what she experienced as a child and as a young adult when she moved to New York City. Jacqueline moved to New York with her mom and siblings, and they find that they have a new little brother that's born in New York City. The reader sees how she grows up and how she starts to find her niche as a writer, whereas her sister is the reader and her brother is the singer. She starts to really grow into her own as a writer. She also struggles with the feelings of finding a home, identifying herself. It's sort of a coming-age story. And you also see and you feel her heartbreak as she loses different members of her family, but also enjoys life living with her family and with good friends. Jacqueline's autobiography is not just a story of how she began to love writing and how she learned to find her place in the world, but it's also how she lived and dealt with race issues in the 1960s and 1970s. This is a great book for you if you like history and you like poetry. It's a great book to pick up if you need to read an autobiography for school, but find yourself not liking nonfiction. This, again, does not feel like a autobiography. It feels like a nonfiction, realistic fiction novel. I just read the book One Crazy Summer and thought that these books paired really well together because it's also about a little black girl, but in California around the same time period, and her experiences with the Black Panthers, which they touch on a little bit, as well as the marches with Martin Luther King Jr. I thought these two books paired very well together, even though one is realistic fiction and one is an autobiography. So again, if you like history, if you like poetry, if you need to pick up an autobiography, I highly, highly recommend this book. Happy reading.